Well, following Jesus isn't always easy, but it's not complicated. Welcome to Simple Faith, where we try to make faith and following Jesus a bit more simple. Hey, we're diverting from our typical format today by taking a little bit of extra time and walking through the final week before Jesus goes to the cross. That's often referred to as Holy Week or the Passion Week. And we're going to have an episode Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this week. Want to make sure that you are dialed in for that. If you're subscribed, it will immediately come to your inbox so that you know exactly what's going on. They might be a little bit longer because I've got some friends here with me. Bryan Mrazek and Michael Hinton, our teaching team here at Church 360. We're all going to talk about what was Jesus doing on each of these days as it leads up to the cross. And we're even going to deal with the infamous Saturday, what was going on then. So I'm excited about this conversation. You may have questions. You may have prayer requests. I want to ask you to go ahead and put those on our Instagram feed, which is at the Simple Faith Podcast, where we'll do our best to answer them as quickly as we possibly can, but love for you to check that out as we keep giving you content there. Okay, so here we go. I want to invite you to slow down with me over these next few moments. Take a breath. Imagine walking the dusty roads of Jerusalem nearly 2,000 years ago. This is the week that changed everything, the week we call Passion Week. Let's walk it together, see what Jesus was doing, what that means for us. Today's Monday, and we're talking about what Jesus was doing Monday. So yesterday, he enters into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey while everybody's yelling Hosanna and laying down palm branches. It's very symbolic. But then he goes back out of the city overnight and comes back in on Monday and sees something entirely different. So, Bryan, I'm going to throw this to you first of all. What happened on Monday? What did Jesus do? And why was he so upset? So give us the setting here.
Yeah, so we see Jesus walk into the temple and the money changes are happening, which, just to give a little more background and historical context, people were simply charging money for different sacrifices and upscaling the charge as people were coming in. And so Jesus sees it. And I love his line that he goes, "This is a house of prayer, but you've made it a den of thieves." My goodness.
What a bar.
Right? And so we don't see this anger, but we see this holy passion that this is my Father's house and look at what you've done to it. And for me, what I've been really wrestling with as I see what happens on Monday is this moment and this kind of, I guess, introspection that I want us to think through is that how have we been robbing the church? Right? I mean, he comes in, this is a house of prayer. You've been making a den of thieves. And then as I think through this, I'm not talking about financially. I'm not talking about tithes. I'm talking about our posture. That so many of us, especially in the American church, we become consumers instead of contributors of God's house. And you see what happens when Jesus shows up. And so I think the question is not necessarily what can I get out of it, but what can I give to it? How can I be a part of this? How can I serve? How can I give generously? How can I pray for those around me? Because I think when we really look at each and every time we show up at church on a weekend, it's more of like, well, did I like the song? Did I like the message? Was that on point for me? But instead it's like, no, I get to be a part of this. So I would just encourage all of us, like, let's stop robbing it. And then the line I wrote down for myself was the temple wasn't meant to be a marketplace. And the church isn't meant to be a spiritual Costco. And then maybe what we really need to do is not critique the church, but ask Jesus to flip some tables in us. What am I doing? What am I allowing in? What am I robbing myself of? And what needs to change?
Michael, what's your thoughts on this day?
Man, I think what's interesting to me, what caught my attention as I was reading through on his Monday was before, there's this double instance. Before the temple and then after the temple, he has this encounter with this fig tree. Of all the stories of what we see of Jesus,
That poor fig tree.
That poor fig tree gets the brunt of Jesus's frustration. But he comes to this fig tree and he wants to see if it has fruit because he's actually hungry. There's a sustenance lack in him. So he wants some fruit. And he gets to the fig tree and there are leaves on the fig tree. Now, what's interesting about this time is that during this time of the season, this tree should not have produced fruit. Okay. But yet there were leaves on it. And normally when you see a fig tree that had leaves on it back in that era, it meant that there were the potential of early little male fruit or fig. Okay. So he sees this bountiful tree of leaves and he goes to it expecting there to be fruit. And when he gets there, there is no fruit. There's no fruit. And he gets mad and he curses the tree. Now everybody's like, well, what's the point of this? Well, I think it's because Jesus judges the illusion of fruit, but not the absence of opportunity. And so what I mean by that is that, again, these leaves presented this illusion that there would be fruit, but there wasn't any fruit. The leaves were advertising something that the tree actually did not have. The tree had the appearance of life without the substance of life. It looks productive from a distance, but it was barren up close. And I often find that, especially in my own life, man, it can be so easy for me to like put myself together, make myself look like I'm doing a lot of great things, like I'm super spiritual. I pray, I carry my big Bible, right? I go to all the Bible studies, I tell everybody. But really, on the inside, I am dying because I'm not really producing what the outside is showing. And I think for us today, I mean, that's a question we should ask. That's what Jesus is alluding to in this fig tree. Man, what's happening on the inside versus what you're trying to show on the outside?
Oh, that's so good. I think there's a couple of misconceptions people have from this story of the cleansing of the temple, which is the second time that he's done this now. The first misconception is you can't sell anything in church. Okay. And I remember working at a church, and they wouldn't allow any kind of registrations for VBS or selling a T-shirt or a CD or anything like that in the building. But outside the building, they'd set it all up.
Yeah, it's safe out there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what's going on here. This is not, this kind of edict of don't sell anything near the building. It's an upscale, like you said. People were coming from far and wide to offer their sacrifices, and they couldn't always bring it with them, so they had to buy it at the temple so they could sacrifice it. And the opportunistic people there thought, well, we'll jack up the price because they got to have it. And what I love about what Jesus and the authors of these moments point out is they reference the pigeons, which pigeons were what you would use for sacrifice if you couldn't afford the bigger animals. So when you look at the story of Jesus, his mother and father, earthly father Joseph, when they come to the temple, they bring pigeons. So it's like Jesus is really resonating with the poor there to say, I had a single mom because Joseph ends up dying. I had poor parents, and you're upscaling and upsizing the poor and doing that in the name of God. That's what's really going on here, not don't sell a T-shirt in the church. Which takes you off the hook, Bryan, because you provide all of our T-shirts. The second misconception I think people have is that it's okay to just lose it. This idea that Jesus freaks out in the temple and overturns tables. And I hear people say this all the time. I'm getting ready to flip over some tables.
Yeah, the righteous anger.
The righteous anger. Did you notice in the passage it says Jesus made a whip? That is a carefully tactical, takes a while kind of thing. So this is not just he flew off the handle. And what he flew off the handle about was not what righteous anger people typically have today. They get righteous anger about their political party or something that somebody said on Facebook or something somebody didn't say on a Sunday morning. Jesus is upset because somebody's creating a barrier.
Oh, come on, Rusty.
For people to get to his Father.
Absolutely. Access.
Exactly. And if that's what we got the most mad about, when a church behaves in such a way that lost people think that's not for me, that would be good righteous anger right there. Well, any final thoughts on this story, guys? This is a big Monday for Jesus, and I'm sure that people were scratching their heads after this, wondering, what in the world? I mean, we just, the guy comes in to a hero's welcome the day before, and then, throws these tables over and all that. I mean, the tide is beginning to turn on Jesus over the course of this week, and I think it really starts on this day.
Yeah, I think my final thought would be, I think just playing off your point there, it had to be jarring for the people at that moment to see this. They had been told, they had been trained, they had been led to believe, they'd been taught that access to God required excess.
Whoa. Yeah, I like that.
And then Jesus comes and says, no. Actually, excess keeps you from God. And it's the willing humbleness of surrender that gets you closer to the Lord. And so Jesus begins to show that. And I think that was just so jarring. They didn't even know what to do with themselves.
Right.
Yeah. I would just go back to what you said, Michael, about the fig tree. It's the bookend to the moment, right? And he sees it before he goes into this temple. That could have been looking like it was thriving, but there was no real fruit. It could have been packed, but there was no real fruit. And so he sees it before he goes in, after he goes in. It's that perfect moment of going, man, the temple's crowded, but how much is actually thriving with life of Jesus?
So good. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow with what was Jesus doing on Tuesday. Really interesting stuff there, and I can't wait for you to be a part of it. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the podcast so you get this content. Check us out on YouTube as well, because you get to see these incredibly handsome individuals next to me and myself. So anyway, love for you to check it out. Make sure you pass this on to a friend. Join us for every episode of this week, and we will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, keep it simple.